Welcome to the church at Hiraeth, Wednesday Words of Wisdom. One verse from the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 24. Do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Let me just put my Bible and glasses down there. Lots of ways that you could look at that verse, lots of things that you could draw from it, all correct, of course, nothing contradictory. But the angle that I'm coming from is, as you will see now, I watched a great film this week, Scott of the Antarctic, 1948, starring Sir John Mills. And it was riveting because it's historically true, it's correct, it happened, rather than just a film that's been made up. When they travelled to the Antarctic on their journey to the South Pole, they arrived, they set up base camp. There were quite a lot of them, support staff, etc. And then they began the journey to reach the pole itself. And along the way, in stages, decisions had to be made about who continued and who then went back to the base camp. And a couple of those choices were made along the way. And Scott, he was the leader of the expedition. It was his job to then go to people and say to them, I'm ever so sorry, but you're not going any further. You need to return back. And that was whittled down to the final 5 that then eventually did go on to reach the South Pole. Imagine the disappointment. Well, you could see it in the film, but imagine the disappointment of those people. They'd signed up, they'd joined the team, they wanted to reach the destination, the goal, but they weren't chosen. I think that's life, that it isn't always about getting our own way. It is about handling disappointment, and that's the angle that I'm coming from with all of this. We now have a situation with children where some schools have a sports day and it's a non-winners sports day. It's all about participation. It's all about taking part. It's all about having a good time, not about winning. Now, I get that. Of course I do, to some extent. That's probably a positive thing, but only to some extent. Because if you get to the stage whereby there are no winners, there are no losers, it's only just about taking part. When those kids leave school, they will be totally unprepared for what we call the real world. Because when you leave school and you leave your education behind you and you start to apply for jobs, very rarely will you apply for the first job, get it, and be there for the rest of your life. Your working career will invariably involve sending in application after application after application, and many of them won't even be answered. You could get an interview and be absolutely convinced that you've got that job, only to be rejected, disappointed. How do you handle that? Well, it's all about character. It's all about being made of that stern stuff inside that can handle when things don't go your way. I've worked in professional football and I know the way that it works. I know the mechanics behind the scene, and every professional club will have an academy. And those kids will be under 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, every age group, all the way up to senior football. There's a fluidity from the very, very young right through to the players in the first team squad. And at the end of every year in the academy, the under 7s, 8s, 9s, they will all, each child with their parents, sit down with the academy coach for that year and be told one of 2 things. Yes, we think you're great. There's some wonderful potential there. We'd like to offer you a place for the next age group next year. Or, in the case of many, little Johnny, he's a great lad, great to have around the dressing room, great attitude, great spirit, great footballer, great worker, very dedicated, but unfortunately, he hasn't quite made the cut this time round. Now, those are only youngsters who have been told that. Adults are the same. Football is extremely competitive. Players sign on a contract, and then when that contract comes to an end, they're either snapped up by someone else, poached by someone else in the meantime, offered a new contract at the club, or told to go and no one wants them. They can go from playing in front of thousands of people on a weekly basis to working in an office or a factory or a builder's yard the next. The disappointment. And these things have to be handled. They will either make us or they will break us. And watching that film, I saw the disappointment in many of those people. They were told, you're not coming. You need to go back. In life, we don't always get our own way. We do get knockbacks. We do get set back. We do get pushed down. It's inevitable. And this is why I feel that, especially with children, it needs to be done in a right way. We don't want to break their spirit. We don't want to crush them at the age of 4 or 5 and scar them for the rest of their lives. But it could be argued that it's wrong to make everyone a winner, because eventually they will find out that that's not true. Things need to be done in a right way. Of course they do. Although I'm talking now about us as adults. How do we handle disappointment? Do we throw a tantrum because we didn't get the job? Do we kick off because we weren't offered a contract? Do we go crazy because we haven't had a pay rise for 2 years and we keep getting turned down? We need to understand that life is like a race and not everyone wins the prize. And whilst we shouldn't be walking over other people to get there, that's not what I'm talking about. What we should be doing is be the best person that we can. Yes, I suppose we are competing against others when you go for an interview. That's the nature of the beast. There's only one job available and 1,000 applicants. So you do want to get that one job ahead of the other 999 people who have applied. But do it in such a way that it's all about us and being the best that we can, rather than trying to put other people down, climbing over folks to get to the top of the pile. It's important to be the best person that we can in terms of our skill set and our abilities and our character, and run the race so that we get the prize, but not in such a way that it's all about selfishness and putting other people down. But, and this is the real gist, when things don't go our way, handle them with grace. Handle them in the right way. Accept the fact that we didn't get what we wanted, and don't allow it to cloud our character, and don't allow it to affect our life.